body image thing.
So you don't worry that much about what's going on with you. You don't worry about cultural pressure, about how you should look, or...
To some extent, sitting in small seats in the classrooms, trying to buy clothes, it becomes a problem. And I do worry a little bit about people's first impression. Right now I'm looking for a job, and it makes a difference how one presents themselves. And it's a definite first impression problem when you're obese.
What kind of impression do you think people have?
That I'm either lazy or have no self-control, and which may or may not be the case, but it's a definite image that overweight women especially have. Okay. I think with men it's a little different, but I'm not a man, so I don't know.
Thank you. With your weight or your body image, are you happy with the way you look?
No.
Now? How about at another point in your life?
In the last couple months, I lost about 25 pounds, so I'm pretty happy with that.
How did you do that?
It was a side effect of a medication.
Oh.
Not a bad.
So it wasn't something you tried to do, it just happened for you. Have you experienced people treating you differently?
Mm-hmm. Very much so.
In what way?
When I went home for Christmas to Michigan, people I hadn't seen in 8 months, I was all of a sudden their best friend, and they were so happy to see me, give me big hugs, and when they weren't that friendly to me before.
And how did you feel about that?
Flattered in one way, but kind of ticked off.
But it makes that much difference. Yeah.
That's the first words out of anybody's mouth I saw.
What?
Wow, you've lost a little weight, you look good.
Well, thank you. Ever been on a diet, tried to lose weight?
Yes, lots of times. I think I learned dieting at my mother's knee, and body image has always been a problem for me. It's been hard, and now I'm 47, and I've spent a lot of time working on it, and I'm starting to make some progress. But it's been a long haul.
Why do you think diets have not worked for you?
Well, what I read now is that diets actually physically don't work. They set up a system where our body feels starved, and it stores more fat after the diet than it did before. So I think that certainly in this society that's not really widely disseminated information. And that's a big problem.
So you found yourself caught in that yo-yo experience of up and down, up and down.
Plus whatever emotional problems I had that had to be dealt with.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you. Welcome back. It was interesting to hear what they had to say. I'm now interested to hear what Judy and Arthur might have to say, hearing the real-life struggle of some people who offered to share their stories with us.
Well, the first young lady is a story, sadly, that we hear all the time. There's an amazing discrimination against people that are overweight. And it happens every day, every hour, throughout their lives. And I think it's really almost impossible to imagine how hurtful that can be to people. And I very much sympathize with people that struggle with this problem. It's a form of discrimination that there's no lobby for, and it's really very sad because we're judged so much by our appearance, especially in this country where beauty is everything. And to think a person's worth somehow is increased if they've lost 25 pounds.
Well, in fact, that's what we heard. Our second young woman said that. Apparently there's a big difference in her reception with the weight loss.
Her comment about it being a plus and also a minus at the same time is really true, because on the one hand we want desperately to know that we're cared for and loved, not for what we look like, but what is really on the inside.
And in fact, in your book, I know Arthur particularly makes a statement that this particular struggle does require a spiritual solution, that pills and diets do not work. And so when we talk about a solution, what kinds of approaches do you have in your Thin Within program?
Well, we really look at it from 3 different points of view: the physical hunger, the emotional hunger, and the spiritual hunger. And we have some very practical tools that we offer people for dealing with physical hunger, how to do that, how to understand the difference between hunger, psychological hunger, and physiological hunger.
I imagine there's people who you work with who have not felt physical hunger for quite some time.
That's
Yeah.
really true.
So-
People will say, I've never, ever felt hungry. I've never allowed my body to get to an empty place. And it is an exciting process once it's made safe.
The other end of that spectrum is the people who say they've always been hungry and that they're always hungry. They're never satisfied.
Okay, so that
Yeah.
kind of
Something obviously is going on here, which is very different than what our bodies need for nourishment.
well, there's that sense of never being satiated.
Yes.
You know, this is kind of a vast hole, and I just keep putting things in it.
That's right. And
Yeah.
that goes to the second point of the emotional hunger. And that's why we really want to and desire to help people to understand what is beneath the eating.
Okay.
Whether it may be one of the issues that we talked about earlier, the traumatic event, or if it's been some abuse. It could be a controlling parent. It could be a sensitive child who, this is sort of an interesting situation where two children are raised in the same environment, and the environment may look pretty good from the outside, and one child will feel that their needs are met, and the other child that is sensitive, thin-skinned, will feel that their needs aren't being met, that they aren't being heard. It may not be, the communication may not be deep enough for them, or the understanding.
Does that have a physiological base in some way, that why some people are more thin-skinned or more susceptible to this?
It may. I don't really know the answer to that. There's probably a lot more psychology involved than physiology. To address the spiritual issue, Mary, we feel very strongly that each of us is gifted or born with this need, this desire to be felt worthwhile, to be cherished, to feel like we have value to the world and to those around us. What it really comes down to is that each of us needs love. And what so often happens, if that's been thwarted in any way, if people haven't experienced that wonderful sense of being loved for who you are, whether it's by the family or peers or schoolmates or whatever, that they will then turn to a counterfeit to fill up the void in their lives. That's where the spiritual thing comes in. Just one other point there. We hear over and over again someone, when they finally focus on what the real issue is, it will go back to some sort of a spiritual thing, and there needs to be forgiveness for some past abuse or past sin. And once that problem has been addressed and resolved, then the person is on their road to recovery.
I've also found in my work that the connection with a community outside of yourself as well, that I think one of the first signs of people who struggle with food and food issues tends to be isolation.
Yes.
They tend to, it's interesting, hoard food as well as their inner thoughts. And so part of the healing has to do with letting that out, with sharing, with feeling valued by people. Because I think for a lot of people, they hear spiritual truths through other people,
Yes.
as opposed to, you know, being enlightened as they're walking down the road.
Exactly, and we need to know that there are other people struggling and wrestling with these same issues, and it's really comforting when someone stands up in our workshops and would share something personal, and another person can really relate to that and say, I feel just like that.
right, me too.
That's right, it's very encouraging to our souls.
Tell me about these workshops that you're talking about.
We offer workshops for people. It's really taking the information in the book and putting it in a platform where people can discuss and participate and really apply these principles to their day-to-day life. So it's something that is not just theory, it's application.
Oh, that's an excellent point, because I know people, and myself included, who have read every book,
Yes.
every nutritional plan, every diet. I mean, we could be dietitians very easily, and yet it never moves from our heads to our hearts.
Exactly.
So you're talking about getting some principles that are useful.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
The workshops are a safe place for people to really get into the issues that they need to get into, that they need to address and resolve. And so Judy's been teaching these for 20 years and has taught them all over the country and Canada, and very successful.
it's meeting a tremendous need, and as Arthur said, it does create a safe place for people to begin to open up, and then we place people in support groups afterward.
Oh, okay.
So that's, again, goes along with your theory that we really need that partnership and that fellowship and that encouragement.
You bet. Now, how about, I know there has been some research using medications, for example, Prozac with bulimia. Do any of your clients, in addition to what you are providing, also receive medical treatment?
We don't prescribe drugs for this problem. And Mary, I spent 33 years in medical practice, and I don't think that I ever saw a pill be the answer to the problem. I think that these are issues that a person needs to address and resolve within themselves, take the responsibility for, and make whatever changes, whatever corrections they need to make for the rest of their lives. The other thing, being a medical doctor, that concerns me greatly is that all drugs, you mentioned one, all drugs have side effects, and the idea that if 85 million Americans are overweight, 85 million Americans ought to be taking this pill makes no sense to me at all. I just don't think that's the way to go.
Okay. You can see the temptation, though. Because,
Sure.
you know, when you talk
Give me
about...
a pill
right.
and solve my problem. And people do come in asking that. And in my earlier medical practice, I tried everything that was supposed to help. And honestly, I don't think I ever saw any results at all. Maybe short-term, temporary results, but no long-term results.
Okay. So then you'd have people regaining the weight and
Right.
then increasing their discouragement.
Right.
Again.
We're talking about really a healing that needs to be done, and for any of us who've struggled with food and eating issues, and I certainly can attest to the fact that I did as well. And it's a process, Mary. It's not a quick fix, and I know that's not what people want to hear.
No, it's not.
They want to hear.
I want to get it done with now.
It's the instant society, and they want results right now, and it just doesn't happen that way.
But on the other hand, you know, when you start talking about inner work, I mean, people, I think, automatically think, oh, we're talking about years before I begin to see a difference. And I guess I'm wondering in your program how soon people do begin to see some physical recovery. I mean, do they need to have resolved all of their inner child issues and abuse before they begin to have some change?
Not at all.
Okay.
No. You see, as soon as people begin to see that there is hope, and that there is really help on a physical, emotional, and spiritual level, there's an excitement, and that there's truth out there that will be life-changing from the inside out. Mary, I think that we know that the instant cure, thank goodness, is really not the answer, even though we'd like it to be the answer. So when they begin to sense that there's some real hope here, and people begin to release weight immediately.
Okay.
So there are immediate results, but most of all, it's a change from within. Their heart and their soul is lightened as well as their bodies.
Yes, what we're talking about is much more than just a weight problem. It's a new way of life and a new way of feeling about yourself and relating to the world. And it's an exciting process to see it.
We're going to need to close. I want to thank you very much for being here today.
Thank you, Mary.
Thank you.
Join us next week as we celebrate Valentine's Day together, answering the question, why don't we leave when we say we will? I'm Mary Crocker Cook, and this is Bay Area Psychology. Good night.